Tonight, 24 hours of chaos. In a dramatic U-turn, the Chancellor ditches a tax cut for higher earners. The day after, the Prime Minister insisted the policy would not be abandoned.
You know, we get into this stage that people say, oh, are you backing down, are you doing this, that and the other? For me, the important thing is we've reached the right decision.
Also making the headlines, the students struggling to secure accommodation. Hundreds vying for every flat as it comes on the market.
I'll be reporting from Anfield on the eve of Rangers' Champions League match against Liverpool.
And the King and Queen Consort visit Scotland's newest city. I'm Kellyanne Woodland in Edinburgh.
And I'm John Mackay in Glasgow. This is the STV News at 6. Good evening. With the ink barely dry on his mini-budget, the Chancellor made a huge U-turn today, ditching plans to scrap the top rate of income tax in the rest of the UK. Yesterday, the Prime Minister had insisted the policy would not be abandoned.
The Scottish Conservative leader Douglas Ross says that's the right thing to do, despite calling on Nicola Sturgeon to replicate tax cuts for the rich just a few days ago. Well, live now at our Westminster correspondent Catherine Sampson, who's at the Conservative Party conference in Birmingham for us tonight. And Catherine, just how damaging has today been for the Chancellor and the Prime Minister?
Well, look, as a new Prime Minister, as a new Chancellor, usually the first party conference would be a really triumphant, uplifting event. I think it's fair to say for both, the last 24 hours must have felt pretty humiliating. I mean, Kwasi Kwarteng had to hastily rewrite his conference speech. Yesterday, I sat down to interview the Prime Minister. She spent, much of that day defending the tax cut for top earners, saying she was sticking by it. By the time I woke up in Birmingham this morning, that plan had been binned. Getting Britain moving is the slogan looming over a conference that's taken a sudden change in direction. This morning, a screeching U-turn from the Chancellor Kwasi Kwarteng. He's decided not to cut taxes for people earning over £150,000 a year in England, Wales and Northern Ireland.
I think it was a distraction. I think it was the wrong thing to do. I think we've got to try and listen. I think people in government have to listen to voters, have to listen to people in the country.
This came just hours after the Prime Minister was defending tax cuts for top earners in a round of interviews, despite criticism from some of her own MPs. Prime Minister, do you enjoy chaos?
Well, I don't know what your question is getting at. Why don't you be more specific?
Do you think for many Scottish voters, the first few weeks of your time in office has felt chaotic, has felt like you don't have a plan, that you're out of control in some way?
Well, we have a very clear plan. We understand that families across the country are struggling, and I think we need to remember what the situation was earlier in the summer, which is people could be facing fuel bills, energy bills of up to £6,000.
Now they're facing potentially losing their homes because of actions that have been taken in Downing Street. Have you made the situation worse?
But what we have done is we've taken very clear steps to deal with energy bills.
You picture yourself as a child of the Union. We know you spent time in Paisley as a child.
I did.
Don't you think there's some who will say you're damaging the Union?
Well, I did grow up in Paisley in the 1980s, and I know what living in a place that has low economic growth and no prospects looks like. And that's why I'm so determined that we have a very clear plan to drive economic growth.
Would Paisley be proud to be associated with your policies at the moment?
Well, I'm proud to have lived in Paisley, and I hope they're proud of me.
Unlike her heroine Margaret Thatcher, it seems Liz Truss is returning, leaving the Scottish Conservative leader Douglas Ross in a difficult place. Just days ago, you were backing the mini-budget and you were urging the Scottish Government to follow suit on cutting the top rate of tax.
The budget as a whole was positive, that I want to see those tax cuts, particularly for those lower earners.
OK, but you did back the budget as a whole, and that meant backing a cut to the top rate of tax. So you're U-turning.
We get into this stage that people say, oh, are you backing down, are you doing this, that and the other. For me, the important thing is we've reached the right decision where the unpopular element of the budget that was causing most concern to individuals, to businesses, to parliamentary colleagues has been removed, but we can focus on the positive areas of the budget that can really deliver.
So this is an utter mess. What I think will be worrying lots of people now, and certainly is worrying the Scottish Government, that we are going to see deep spending cuts come from this government. So having U-turned on the abolition of the top rate of tax, I think what people will want to hear now is a U-turn on the intention to have spending cuts.
The Chancellor ended the day trying to rally his party around a revised plan. It may appease MPs for now, but a lot of damage has already been done. Well, a fairly muted response to the Chancellor's speech in the main hall. This hasn't been comfortable for the party, but there was a sense that U-turn really had to happen because of the criticism that was coming from Conservative MPs. There was a sense it wasn't going to necessarily get through Parliament when they returned. And of course, you know, MPs here, they're looking out with this conference hall in Birmingham. They're looking at falling poll ratings and they're worried about that too. There's going to be more coverage of the Conservative Party conference here later on Scotland Tonight, and an extended version of my interview with the Scottish Conservative leader, Douglas Ross.
Indeed. All right. From Birmingham, thanks, Catherine. Well, as the Conservatives announced their U-turn on tax cuts, a new report laid bare how the cost of living crisis is affecting low-income households in Scotland. Almost a fifth have gone cold and hungry this year.
The Joseph Rowntree Foundation is calling on both the Scottish and UK governments to protect those most at risk. Louise Hosey reports.
2 persons in the household are working, but they still can't make food.
First-hand accounts of poverty. A series of hard-hitting films were shown to members of some of Aberdeen's leading charities today. Tanya features in one of the films. Her dad is her disabled mum's full-time carer.
My mum has bad circulation anyway, so whereas she would really benefit from the heating being on, we just physically can't afford it. It's kind of surreal because it's like we shouldn't have to fight to be able to heat our house or get food.
A new report published today lays bare how the cost of living crisis paints a bleak picture of a society in crisis. The report found 1 in 5 families on low incomes have already gone without food and heating just to make ends meet. 3 in 4 households have cut back on the basics, and around a third of those surveyed said they either have no savings or less than £250 in the bank.
The UK government must uprate benefits in line with inflation. There's been some suggestion over the last few days that they won't do that. If they don't do that, that would be morally indefensible. And in terms of the Scottish Government, I would like to see them go further with the help that they can. Avoid the tax cuts that the UK Government have had, which mainly benefit wealthier families.
The Scottish Government says it's prioritising action to help households in need within its limited powers. The UK Government says it's protecting millions through its energy price guarantee and a £37 billion support package. Louise Hosey, STV News.
The student housing crisis continues. More than 500 people are applying to view a one-bedroom flat in Glasgow city centre. An estate agent has told STV News that homeless students are now so desperate for a place to live, they're offering 6 months' rent in advance.
It comes as huge numbers of those attending universities are still sofa surfing and staying in hotels. Despite the development of student housing in the city, there aren't enough places for them to move into. Vanessa Taff reports.
This is just one of a dozen viewings at this flat in the space of an hour. It's got 1 bedroom and has had over 500 notes of interest. It costs £900 a month. Some students and their families are now second-guessing their decision to study here.
The university that my son is going is a very, 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 very good university. However, we left other cities because of the reputation of Glasgow. But unfortunately, I don't know what's going on in here, why the students does not have places to live in, especially the newbies, the new students who are arriving here as a first year.
Demand for properties is by far outweighing the supply. As many as 2 landlords a month are deciding to sell instead of renting.
It's pretty common to hear from students, obviously backed by the bank of mum and dad, or young professionals, to offer 6 months up front in advance to try and secure a tenancy.
And is that enough?
Unfortunately not. It's so common now that it isn't become a differentiator. If you put in to the landlord that you're willing to pay 6 months in advance, it will generally get your application put in front of them, but it's no guarantee you're going to get accepted, because others will be doing the same too.
Can you see how people would think that landlords are just being greedy if they're asking for 6 months rent in advance?
Completely, I get that, but the landlords are setting a price that they're asking for based on where the market's at. If people offer more, it's really difficult for a landlord to turn around and say no.
But many students are getting a no from landlords. Letting agents say the problem is worst in the west end of the city, impacting those at Glasgow University the most. Those teaching there warn they've seen rising numbers in the lecture halls. The university maintains student numbers haven't significantly increased this year.
Lecturers in my department are having to run the first year lectures twice because there's just simply too many students for there to be just the one slot, which is unprecedented, I think, at least for the past couple of years. So despite what the university are saying, that just doesn't really match up with, I think, lecturers and teaching staff and admin staff's experiences on the ground.
With little hope of a quick solution to the housing crisis, many students will be turning to friends to put a roof over their heads tonight. Vanessa Taff, STV News, Glasgow.
Other stories across Scotland, and more than 50,000 health workers are being balloted for strike action in a dispute over pay for NHS staff. Unison members rejected a 5% pay increase. Nurses will also vote in an RCN ballot starting later this week.
And the judge in charge of the inquiry into Scotland's handling of the COVID-19 pandemic has resigned. Lady Poole told the Scottish Government on Friday she was standing down for personal reasons. Deputy First Minister John Swinney says he will update Parliament about a replacement chair as soon as possible. Now, with extreme pressures on hospitals, it's an ongoing challenge to free up beds and reduce the length of time patients need to spend in them. One service being expanded in a number of health boards is allowing people with complex infections to receive intravenous antibiotics as an outpatient or in their own home.
Those leading this work in Glasgow say nurse specialists play a critical role. Here's our chief reporter, Sharon Frew.
Antibiotics that are helping Kenny Philp recover from a spinal infection. This is a weekly appointment for the 51-year-old to top up the daily medication he's self-administering at home. 30 days after his emergency spinal surgery, Kenny was medically stable enough to be discharged, but he still needed intravenous antibiotics. The OPAT service allowed him to recover at home.
It was huge because I'd been told from the beginning, like the spinal infections are very, very difficult to treat. And I was told from, pretty much day one, probably need to be in hospital for sort of 2 to 3 months. I think it's about 7 or 8 weeks that I've been at home, and I've just been sort of daily administering the antibiotics myself. Very, very, very straightforward, and not what I thought it would be at all.
As well as complex cases like Kenny's, this service at Glasgow's Queen Elizabeth University Hospital is also being used to treat infections such as cellulitis.
When we show them first about making up IV antibiotics, maybe using a PICC line, they do look at us as if, this is quite a worrying, daunting prospect, but we spend a few days with them teaching them, and they grow in confidence. We will never let them go away and do it themselves without that kind of, they're happy to do it, and if they have any concerns at all, they just pick up the phone to us.
All but 2 of Scotland's NHS boards have some form of this service. In Greater Glasgow and Clyde, they have plans to expand. More than 800 patients here have been assessed for OPAT in the last year. It's estimated at least 12,000 overnight stays in hospital have been avoided.
Critically, there's a number of patients that we know will present to emergency departments and medical receiving units who we potentially can provide an alternative to that front door experience, so we can prevent them being admitted in the first place. As the NHS is remobilising, as more surgeries being done, as admission rates with other non-COVID related things have increased, our services is much more in demand. In the last 9 months, seen about a 50% increase in our clinical activity in the service.
This demand is expected to grow.
Expanding hospital capacity will remain a major challenge throughout the winter months. Sharon Frew, STV News.
Now Sheila is here with the sport.
Get your fill of the action. STV Sport, sponsored by Papa John's Pizza.
Good evening. Rangers have been dealt a major blow on the eve of their Champions League clash with Liverpool, with the news that Tom Lawrence will be out until after the World Cup. Well, Raman Bardwaj is at Anfield tonight and has been speaking to the Ibrox manager, Giovanni van Bronckhorst. Raman.
Thanks, Sheila. Well, this will be the first time these two clubs will face each other in a competitive match. And I think it's fair to say when the draw for the group stage of the Champions League was made, the fixture against Liverpool is the one Rangers fans were looking forward to most. Well, Giovanni van Bronckhorst and his squad got the first glimpse of Anfield a short time ago. One player who hasn't travelled is Tom Lawrence. He had recovered from a knee injury which had kept him out of action last month, but he sustained a fresh injury in training which will rule him out of action for months rather than weeks, according to Van Bronckhorst. So a major blow for Rangers, as you say, Sheila. Well, the Ibrox club have yet to get up and running in the group, played 2, lost 2, but Van Bronckhorst hopes coming up against one of the best teams in England will bring the best out of his players.
It's a huge podium for us to perform, not only for the club but also for the players. As I said before, against the quality side, and it's since many years there was a Scottish team playing against English team. I think the first time in both histories of the club that we're facing each other. So. All good things to look forward to, and we're excited to be here and try to get a good result.
What's your assessment of this Rangers team, and what sort of threat do you think they might pose you tomorrow night?
Good football team, well coached. Exceptional European season last year, obviously. Qualifying for the Champions League, big achievement. Really good football team, and that's what we have to prepare for. And the team who have had results now they didn't want. So that's what they wanna change definitely. So we expect a proper fight, a real fight, to be honest, and that's what we prepared for.
As you may have saw, some Rangers fans are already here. There'll be 2,500 inside the stadium tomorrow night. They'd dearly love to see their team record their first points of the competition against Liverpool tomorrow night. Sheila.
Raman, thanks very much. Looks like an eventful night down there. OK, now ahead of this week's World Cup playoff semi-final, Scotland's Jen Beattie says it's her memories of France back in 2019 that are driving her to help the national side qualify for next year's tournament. To do that, Pedro Martinez Losa's squad first have to beat Austria on Thursday night at Hampden to set up another Hampden clash with Ireland in the final next week. Arsenal defender Beattie is hoping for a repeat of some of her best days in a Scotland jersey.
One of, I think, my favourite ever memories was scoring against Argentina on the exact same pitch that my dad had scored a try playing for Scotland, and just for that to happen is just unheard of. So to have those memories, of course, makes it an even bigger challenge trying to get to another World Cup.
Motherwell boss Stevie Hamill admits tomorrow's trip to Ross County could play a big part in what they want to achieve this season. Despite 3 games without a win, Hamill says he's seen lots of positives and believes the chance to move 8 points clear of the bottom 3 is a huge incentive.
It's a massive game. I don't overly look at the table just now, but it's a massive game for us where we want to be in the campaign and the kind of season we want to have. It's a massive game for us. It would put us back into kind of where we want to be. But again, it's not going to be easy. It's not going to come easy like every single game.
That's it from me. Raman will be live again from Anfield tomorrow night with all the build-up to Liverpool against Rangers.
Get your fill of the action. STV Sport, sponsored by Papa John's Pizza.
The weather forecast now with Phil.
A light drizzle is coming in from the west. Tui Blue Hotels. Sponsor STV Weather.
Well, as we head through the rest of this evening and overnight, we continue to see these fronts working their way in from the west, introducing some thicker cloud and their band of rain. After midnight, that rain will turn progressively heavier, and we'll also start to see the winds picking up strength across western coastal parts, possibly reaching gale force, with lows tonight of around 11 or 12 degrees Celsius. So quite a mild night to come, and that's thanks to the fact that we're in a southerly airflow. Now, looking ahead to tomorrow, that rain will continue to work its way eastwards. A wet start to the day, some tricky travel conditions around rush hour. By lunchtime, that will have cleared. We'll see a brief spell of brighter, drier conditions before that thick cloud starts to return from the south by evening. Before that cloud arrives, in the best of any brightness, temperatures reaching highs of around 15 or 16 degrees Celsius. Looking ahead to Wednesday, unfortunately, it's not looking too great. A very wet, very windy start to the day. The main disruptive factor for Wednesday will be the strong winds, and the Met Office have already issued a yellow weather warning for wind covering the whole of the country. We could see gusts of up to 70 miles per hour, with some locally severe gales across the north and west coasts and the Northern Isles. Elsewhere through the course of the afternoon, we will start to see the winds easing and also some widespread sunshine developing, with temperatures reaching highs of around 13 or 14 degrees. Bye-bye.
TUI Blue Hotels. Sponsor STV Weather.
And finally, crowds lined the streets around Dunfermline Abbey today to welcome King Charles and the Queen Consort as they visited Scotland in their first joint public engagement since the late Queen's funeral.
The King officially conferred the town's new city status, saying the event would gladden his mother's heart, as it does his. Our political reporter Laura Alderman was there.
As royalty rolled into Scotland's ancient capital this morning, buzzing crowds cheered their arrival. Many greeted personally.
Fantastic to have you yourself. Well, I got quite a few pictures. I'm coming round, getting out of the car and shook his hand, shook Camilla's hand. Aye, very nice.
And you never know if you'll come back, so you have to take this opportunity.
Yes,
don't you?
It's been lovely.
It's amazing. I'm from the Philippines, so it's just wonderful that we're right here, right now. It's an experience, a memorable experience.
It's weird because you always see him on like TV and stuff, but you never really think you'll see him like in person. It's a strange experience.
I see what's real. It feels a bit strange.
Yeah.
It was really unexpected, and it was just lovely to be able to do it so soon after his becoming king.
Crowds have packed in here to Dunfermline's High Street, young and old, children on their parents' shoulders, just to catch a glimpse of this historic moment, continuing this town, now city's long tradition of welcoming royalty. Dunfermline was awarded city status earlier this year as part of the late Queen's Jubilee celebrations. And in his first official duty since the mourning period for his mother ended, King Charles conferred this new status.
Now, of course, we gather to celebrate this great occasion, but also to commemorate the life of Her late Majesty, whose deep love for Scotland was one of the foundations of her life.
Not everyone in attendance received such a warm welcome, however. The royal couple then visited Dunfermline Abbey, the birthplace of King Charles I and the final resting place of 11 Scottish kings and queens. Today was undoubtedly a proud one for the new city.
It was great to meet them all the dignitaries, no matter what party you vote for, whatever. It's all about Dunfermline people, the people of Dunfermline, and it's about them enjoying being in the city. And what an honour for them. Been that, and so well done and great. I'm very proud of you all.
The King then travelled to Holyrood Palace to host an event for Britain's South Asian communities. Dunfermline has undisputable, centuries-old royal ties and has long been at the heart of Scotland's history. But today marks a new chapter in that story. Laura Alderman, STV News, Dunfermline.
That's all from us tonight. I'll be back with Scotland tonight, including more from the Conservative Conference in Birmingham.
And we're back again tomorrow at 6. Join us then. Bye-bye.
Good night.